Okay, so I just wanted to give a quick tour of the new Sabersense chassis for the 7 Chambers Magic of Myth lightsaber hilt. Now this isn't the crystal chamber version, this is just a nice, easy to install, simple chassis to make your saber work. So there's a few features to it which I think are worth looking at. So let's get the box out of the way. So to start with, we've got the basic layout. Removable battery in the front, NeoPixel connector in the front there, which touches onto the disc in there, which is wired through to another connector on the front, which is what engages with the blade. And then at the back we've got removable speaker pod. I'll come back to that in a minute. So to start with, I'll start at the front of the hilt. I just want to have a little bit about this this setup in here. Now there's 2 ways of doing this that are available on the website. There's one way which gives a more durable blade fitting, and there's another way which gives a slightly better looking blade fitting. So the issue you always have with thin neck sabers like this is by the time you factor in the thickness of the metal, you've got very little blade depth, 3/4 of an inch maximum, which makes the blade a bit unstable. So in order to get around this, you can do it one of 2 ways. The more durable, better blade fitting way is to use the brass heatsink that comes with the 7 Chambers kit. Let's get another front end here. That screws into the front. Then you use this little insert, which again is available on the My Shapeways shop. Pops in there, and your NeoPixel connector goes in the front of it. Now the benefit of this system is it's obviously metal, makes it nice and durable. Your blade can be quite a snug fit around the outside of it, as well as being a snug fit on the inside of the emitter, which makes it, makes it nice and strong. The downside is once that's fitted, it puts the NeoPixel connector almost level with the top of the hilt. What that means is by the time you've got your strips and everything wired up, you end up with no pixel at the very end of the emitter, so you have a little tiny shadow on the blade when you light it up. That's the sort of trade-off. Now if you wanted to get rid of that shadow, what you can do is use this option. This option. So this works along similar lines. You don't use the heatsink. The NeoPixel connector goes in the front of it. Let me take this out. NeoPixel connector simply pops in the front there, a bit of a snap fit, you can add it with a bit of glue, and then that whole thing pops into the emitter. I've made it quite a tight fit. Now this puts the NeoPixel connector slightly lower. If you compare it to the heatsink, you can see it. The NeoPixel connector sits 1/4 of an inch lower, which can make all the difference in terms of looks. The downside of it is obviously this is 3D printed plastic, not metal, and also you can't have this as too tight a fit inside the blade tube, because the last thing you want is when you lift the blade out, if the blade grabs onto that, it could, even if it's glued, pull the whole thing out. So that's got to be a sort of slightly looser fit on the blade. So that's the trade-off, but the advantage is you lose that shadow on the blade. So yeah, 2 ways of achieving the same thing. The other benefit of both of these systems is you have a nice, anyone who's wired up the front end of a thin neck saber knows that getting the wiring right is a bit of a problem, but in here you've got a nice big chamber, so you can wire up the connector just on the end there, pop it in, and you've got a little bit of room inside there for the sort of wires to sort of scrunch in, because it's hard to push them through the actual channel, because the channel on these things is quite thin. So yeah, so that's the 2 ways of wiring up the emitter. So now what we've done on my one is this one rather, this is for a customer, is the better looking one that loses the shadow. So yeah, so that's the front end of it. Now going to the battery holder, there's another neat little feature which we build into these, which most chassis don't have, is what I call mechanical polarity protection. So if we look on the, it's getting quite close here, if you look on the battery, the positive battery tab there, you can see it sort of slots in behind two sort of side bits, if you see what I mean. Now the idea is when the battery goes in, I'm not going to do it because it tends to squash the spring pin at the other end, but the button can fit between that channel to make contact. If you put it in the wrong way, that flat bit can't, so it can't connect with the positive thing, the positive connection. So it gives a little bit of polarity protection. So yeah, as I say, there's not many chassis that give you that. Anyway, so pop the battery in, pop the front end of the hilt back on. Now inside here we've got our simple but functional switch box. Again, this is all part of the chassis available from the Shapeways shop. You've got these little raised ridges. The idea is they're just tight enough to bind on the clamp card when you fit it, and that holds the two tactile switches and the two LEDs for the indicators there. You get a lovely solid feel to it if you use the right size switches. Now this has been designed for a particular size of switch, based on it having some double-sided tape underneath the tactile switches to hold them in place. When you build it, I would order a couple of switches either side of that, because tolerances can vary of manufacturing and 3D printing. But if you get it right, it's a nice, no flap on the buttons, no rattle, just a nice feeling tactile switch. So to get it going, and through the pommel there, we can pop there's our speaker pod with a speaker connect on the back, and you've got a little, again, part of the 3D printed kit, a little spacer in there which pushes the speaker in up against those two pins there for the speaker connection. So to get it going, obviously we flick the switch. Now obviously there's no boot sound because the speaker isn't in it. You can't switch it on with the speaker in place. Now you've got status LED there, as well as the two screen accurate cave scene animation LEDs on the switch box. So with that on, the board is powered up but the blade isn't lit. As soon as you light the blade, it starts blinking. It's just a helpful little status LED. All of these LEDs will shut off, the way I've programmed this, will shut off after 15 minutes, so you don't really need to keep opening it up. So let's pop that in. So now we can, of course the other thing is the blade retention screw is there, which goes underneath the end of the emitter. So the idea is you'd slip the emitter onto the blade first, bob it in, tighten the screw, and then screw that down to finish the whole look. So let's fire it up. Now the first thing you'll notice is no shadow on the emitter there with this system. You've got a nice effects built into it. Lock up, so plaster blocks, lock up, all the sort of usual features there. Our cave scene animations. So yeah, quite a nice. I say it myself. Quite a nice little system. So that is our Magic of Myth lightsaber with a Sabersense chassis.